On this Part 2 episode, Sean Stephenson, professional speaker and listener, shares his lifelong challenges and his journey to success by becoming a student of his own pain. Welcome back to the Leverage Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Sonnenberg, and today we have an extremely special guest, a friend of mine, Dr. Sean Stephenson. So, for those of you that don't know Sean, he's an extremely special person on many levels. I say doctor because he is a therapist. He is an author. He was born with a special rare condition, which he'll go over more. But is it called brittle bone disease? Is that what it's called, Sean?
Yep.
So I've heard so many of your talks, but I'll let you give much more of an in-depth intro, but you're known as being the 3-foot giant. Sean is 3 feet tall. He was told that he had 24 hours basically to live. And what I love about all the talks is, you always mention that the doctor said you had a very short period of time to live, but you have outlived all of those doctors. Sean has appeared on Oprah, Jimmy Kimmel. He's the author of an international best-selling book, Get Off Your Butt. He is just an awesome human being, and I'm very happy to be able to call you my friend. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, bud.
So I would love to hear from you. Can you just give like a very quick bio? What's your background? What are you up to these days? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, I think there's like 6 questions there. Let me start with the first one. So I am a professional speaker and professional listener. Listener being the therapist part, and speaker is I basically take what I've learned listening to so many clients over the last 18 years as a therapist and so many audience members over the last 24 years as a speaker. And I am one of the most psychologically curious people you're ever going to meet. I don't believe that any behavior is an accident. I think everything leads to something else. So when I meet somebody who is raging, or I meet somebody that is chronically depressed, or I meet somebody that is happy, I know that they are living a life that has got them into that position. And I'm curious. I have just as much curiosity when I meet somebody who is a out-of-control drug addict as I do a successful person who is an out-of-control workaholic maybe, or a person that is a in-depth meditator. I just want to know what makes people tick. I've wanted to know that my entire life because, like you said, I was born with brittle bones disorder, and my bones are stunted in growth, and they're also extremely fragile. So something as simple as sneezing growing up would break a collarbone or ribs. And by the time I turned 18, I'd fractured over 200 times. So living in that kind of body, you spend a lot of time by yourself in pain. And pain is an incredible teacher because you can't get away from their lessons. Pain will just stop everything else in your life and make you pay attention to it. And that's pretty amazing. That's damn good marketing, right? And so I became a really good student of my pain. And I figured out that I needed to really take on insecurities as my number one mission for myself if I was going to survive. If I wasn't going to commit suicide from depression or angst or hurt or stress, if I wanted to succeed, I needed to develop my social skills because being 3 feet tall, there was a lot of things physically I couldn't do. I needed the help of other people. And so I needed to develop those social skills. I needed to be able to deal with the coping skills of the massive insecurities that showed up along the way. And that's why I became a therapist, is to really figure out my own head. And then in the process, I found that there are so many amazing people. Everyone, technically, in my opinion, is amazing. Some of us just know how to deal with our hurt in more productive ways so that we're able to give back more versus others who use that pain, twist it in on themselves, and then just project it right back into the world. And so I've spent all these years studying the human condition, working with clients, and now, to answer one of the later questions in your multi-faceted question, is I'm now using a new way of helping people deal with their pain and release the suffering from their insecurities, and that's comedy. I've always wanted to be a stand-up comic. When I was 6 years old, my parents said, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A stand-up comedian." And I didn't really do anything with it until another 33 years later. And I just last night launched my comedy career, and I know it's what I was meant to do. I know that everything I've done thus far has not been a waste. It has led me to where I needed to be and developed skill sets. When you're in front of a crowd, you need an incredible stage presence. And you take 23 years as a speaker, 18 years as a listener, and knowing where people are making mistakes and where they feel like shit because they make their mistakes. That's all good comic material. And I mean, of course, I don't like share people's secrets, but I share the universal truths that we're all struggling with. And last night we had a sold out crowd, and I crushed it. And I'm going after this. And I know that I believe my greatest financial fortune and overall well-being has been kept safely in the comedy realm all these years for me to have now.
That's awesome. Where can we see a videotape of last night?
So I am editing it today because I had some curse words that I don't want out into the world. So I'm editing it. I'm going to put it out online on my fan page. So it's facebook.com/the Sean Stephenson. You'll be able to see it there. And we also have a website. It's not up and running yet, but it will be by the time you post this podcast, called Sean Comedy, SEAN comedy.com. And people will be able to watch that video and be able to find out when I'm going to be doing my other stand-up comedy gigs.
That's awesome. Maybe even like America's Got Talent or something. I don't know if that's on
I'm
the
totally down with trying out for America's Got Talent. Yeah, what I'm doing right now is I'm actually very strategic about this. And I've decided to do all the comedy clubs that I can in Phoenix, California, and around Vegas, and because that's all driving distance for me. And then I'm going to take all of those recordings, put them into a reel, and then my goal is to pitch Netflix for a comedy special.
That's awesome. Did you ever, by the way, get in touch with my friend Andrew?
I think we played some email tag. I didn't fully follow all the way up, but now that I've tasted blood in the water, I will be definitely talking to him.
Yeah, let me know if you need another reintro there.
Cool, thank you.
That's awesome, and I can't wait to watch that comedy. I mean, having watched your talks, you are naturally just a funny person, and I think that you know that obviously now that that's why you're getting into comedy, but you really take advantage of it when you speak, and you insert a lot of humor and comedy in your talks, which I think is what makes a lot of it so powerful.
Thank you. Actually, I just had an idea.
Yeah.
I could send you the audio and you can put in this podcast at the end.
That is a great idea. So keep listening till the end and you will hear Sean's debut of stand-up. Just to go back just a second, because I think that this is something really interesting and something that people that are listening can learn from. But I can't even imagine the physical pain, no less. Probably, I would imagine the mental pain is even worse than the physical pain of like breaking 200 plus bones in your body. How do you handle both the physical and mental pain? And I guess growing up and as an adult, I'm guessing it probably has evolved how you handle those things. So I'm just curious, are you on painkillers? Were you on painkillers? Like, how are you managing the physical and the mental pain, and how has that evolved?
Yeah. So let me just add a little bit of clarity, because I don't want any, what do they call them? Data searching freaks to freak out and say like, there's only 215 bones in the body. How did you break them all? I haven't broken 200 bones. I've broken 200 times. So there are some bones like the femur, the tibia, there's certain bones, ribs, that I would break dozens and dozens of times. So I haven't broken all the bones yet. Hopefully, when we state that, I haven't broken all the bones, nor do I want to break all the bones. But I will say that in the bones that I have broken, I've broken almost every major bone that you can think of, even my skull. And I can't say that I've developed this intentionally. I think it's just been a slow survival process, how I deal with pain. First of all, I've been very clear from a little boy that I didn't want to ever be on pain meds. That the most I've ever had from a traditional fracture is like a Tylenol, or when I was younger, a children's Tylenol. I've had morphine a few times in my life when I was in hospitals for surgeries, and one time was when I was in an accident and I had the whole right side of my body was crushed. I was on morphine for a while, thank God. But outside of those few occasions, I've never been on pain meds because I knew with 200 bone fractures, I'd have to live on them. And that's no way to live. Pain, anything that you do that temporarily relieves pain usually causes a long-term problem. And I don't just mean that in terms of morphine and Vicodin. I mean like behavioral choices as well. Like anything you do that usually relieves temporary pain has a long-term consequence. Not 100% of the time, but many things in life. And so I knew I didn't want to be on pain meds to deal with this condition. So I got really good and didn't even realize that I was doing it consciously, but I got really good at hypnosis, self-hypnosis. And it wasn't until I was maybe 22 years old that I actually started studying hypnosis clinically, professionally, and I became a doctor of clinical hypnosis when I was 32. So from about 22 to 32, I studied hypnosis professionally and then started to practice it professionally in my therapy. But I was doing it before I even knew what I was doing, putting my body into a trance where I was, instead of running from the pain, I went into it, and I listened to what did it have to teach me. And what's amazing about pain gets a really, really, really bad rap because most people are weak. And I don't mean weak like they're pathetic and stupid. I mean they haven't exercised their pain tolerance. The moment something becomes uncomfortable, they run from it, and they mask it, and they deny it as much as they can. If you embrace pain, it will teach you so much. And if you respect pain, it actually shows up less. So my pain, I always looked at as it was, I say this in my book, Get Off Your Butt, that pain was my teacher and I became its good little student. And so when pain would show up, I'd be like, all right, what are we doing? How are we gonna learn today from this? And it would teach me lessons. It would teach me lessons about being present in the moment. When you are, if I could just get a little graphic for a second, when you are in a scenario where you have broken your femur, one of the largest bones in the body, it feels like a sword has been heated up in a fire and then shoved into your bone and systematically twisted every so often when you least expect it. And just when you think the pain is over, it then goes to another level of saying, oh no, I'm not done with you yet. And you're screaming at the top of your lungs and you're thinking to yourself, God, how long is this going to last? And when you have a broken femur, which I've had more than I care to remember, Um, it hurts the most when you fall asleep, because when you fall asleep, your body twitches a little bit. Just the muscles start to shift and slide and release. And when your muscles twitch, it slides the bone that's broken around a bit. And the little bit of sleep you're craving, you get woken up with that white hot stabbing pain. Now, the reason why I painted this picture is I have had choices thousands and thousands of times in my life to interpret that pain as I'm cursed. The world sucks. I got dealt a bum hand. Why continue to go on? This isn't fair. Why me? What did I ever do? What did I ever do to deserve this? I had thousands upon thousands of times to interpret that pain that way. And you know what I found is that when I interpreted that way, the pain got worse. It just got worse because there was no emotional or spiritual relief. It increased. Whereas when I would interpret it as, can I swear on this?
Yeah, go for it.
When I interpret it as, I'm a fucking warrior. What else you got? When I interpreted it that way, it was almost like my pain respected me. And it didn't hurt as much. And I knew I could take the next punch and the next punch and the next punch. And, you know, there was this one night when I was in the hospital. This was in 2014. And I had the whole right side of my body crushed. I had a skull fracture on the right side. I had broken my shoulder, my ribs, my wrist, my hip, my femur, my knee, my ankle. I had broken all of that. And I had a concussion, so I had memory loss. And it wasn't just like a little bit of a memory loss. I had no short-term memory ability. So I would often need to be told why I was in the hospital because I didn't remember the accident. And I was up at night one night screaming in the hospital bed from the twitches that would come from the muscles when I would start to fall asleep. And I was flanked on my right by my friend Nathan and my left by my buddy Peter. And I intentionally called them and asked them if they would fly in and spend the night in the hospital room with me. I just felt spiritually like we were going to have a bond, that we were going to go through hell together. And I don't know why, but it's really making me emotional right now. But we talked about life, and they held my hands that were sweating through each of the stabs of the, like, that white hot pain. And I could just see in their face that they were like, why does my buddy Sean have to go through this? And I just kept looking back at it, and I was like, don't go there. Go to the place of who I'm becoming because of this. And we talked all night. They kept by my side all night through the gates of hell, physically. And it was one of the most bonding experiences of my life. I am grateful for that night.
I mean, it really just makes me, and I'm sure anyone listening right now, just think to themselves, like, how can you ever complain if you like stub your toe or something happens, or, you know, like what you've gone through, basically no one should, or nor that many probably have gone through that. I think that the only other talk that I've ever heard that even somewhat reminds me of this is Marcus Luttrell, the guy from Lone Survivor. It's like, your story is like, not to compare people, but I mean, it's like, it's really insane the amount of mental toughness that you have to stay positive and not get depressed or down on yourself or go to pain medicine. I mean, I've seen firsthand what getting addicted to painkillers can do to people. And it really is awful. So, I mean, it's really just so inspirational to see someone with such mental, I mean, and physical toughness that you have. How how can how can someone else try to even, is this just something that you have to be kind of born with, or you just
No,
have to
no.
go
So
through?
let me dispel a thought someone listening to this could be having right now. And that is that, holy shit, I cry when I stub my toe. I'm a piece of shit because look at what he had to go through. Why can't I toughen up? And that's not, listen clearly, that's not at all what I want anyone to feel. I believe that pain is pain is pain. How do we compare somebody whose child was killed by a drunk driver to the pain of somebody who holds their dying wife of cancer, to somebody who was nearly burned to death in a building, to somebody who was beaten nearly half to death by their father? Like, we can't compare pains. We can't compare abandonment. We can't compare loneliness. It's a waste of time to think I'm a piece of shit because this other person has gone through something worse. Pain is pain is pain. I've gone into the schools in Beverly Hills, and I've gone into the schools of Nairobi, Kenya, where they have absolutely nothing. And I can tell you that suffering is present in both sides of the world. That suffering is present whether you're snorting a line of cocaine or doing a hit of crack, right? It's the human condition is the same. And here's the challenge we have, and I'll come full circle to your question, but here's the challenge we have as a human race. We have a hard time feeling empathy toward people that have what we want. We have a really hard time having empathy. Let me say it again. We have a really hard time having empathy toward the people that have what we want, the pain that they might have to go through. Because we're like, shut up, Tony Robbins, you got your own jet, right? Shut up, Richard Branson, you're in the richest people on the planet. Like, what do you have to complain about, right? It's so easier. Like, shut up, Arnold Schwarzenegger, like you have all this money and power and fame, and you still screwed up your marriage, and like we can get into this judgment, hatred. Who are you to like have a bad day? But you know what? That's a waste of time, because pain is pain is pain is pain. When I hold a young person, like an audience member from a school that I might be speaking to, maybe like a junior high, high school, college kid, when they're like weeping because their parents are getting divorced, I don't sit there and go, toughen up. Do you know what I had to go through? No, that's not what heals. What heals people is listening. What heals people is like, tell me more. Like, and then this is the best listening ever. Ready? The best listening ever is listen and then repeat it back and say, so you're saying that you don't know if your parents will ever get back together, and that hurts so much because you feel you're responsible for them getting divorced because you found your dad cheating on your mom. They'd be like, yeah. And so you're saying that you feel like you're the piece of shit because you told on him, and now you're questioning that. Yeah, it's so. What do you want to feel? And what do you think it's going to take to forgive yourself and to forgive your dad and forgive your mom? And then like when you come from that space, when you can have like an infinite amount of empathy, you can cause so much healing to those that you come into contact with. So I mean, if you could restate your question for me so I can make sure I get the answer you're looking for, but I just needed to share that disclaimer first.
No, totally. I guess the question is, if someone is suffering and going through a really hard time, like what advice, or what is there something that you would suggest they do? Is therapy or meditation, or I guess, you
So
clearly
what's
have,
my prescription, if you will?
yeah, no, like you clearly have such a strong willpower and mental capacity. Like that's something that,
It's not that. Can I tell you what it is?
yeah.
Because I agree with my buddy Ben Hardy. Willpower doesn't work. It has a temporary impact at best. I get that his title is Willpower Doesn't Work. I do think it works. I just don't think it lasts, right? It's not my mental toughness. What it is a series of 3 things that I do. And if all the listener gets from this whole interview is this, I think they'll be very, very grateful. I'm hoping they are. And it's because I've learned this from my mentors, and it's worked for me. There are 3 things that you need to do when you're going through hell. Number 1, you need impeccable self-care. You need impeccable self-care. What does that mean? It means you better find out your rituals that help you relieve the pressure. Because everybody's got pressure within them. Pressure, and as my buddy Alex calls it, pressure and noise causes pain. Let me say, pressure and noise accentuates the pain. It doesn't really necessarily cause it, but accentuates the pain. And something like procrastination, when we check our Facebook feed continually, habitually, when we're surfing the internet mindlessly, when we're just making all the side errands that we don't need to be doing, it's not because we're lazy. It's because we're stressed. And so we're procrastinating to relieve the pressure from within us. And so when I'm teaching people about impeccable self-care, what I'm saying is release the pressure at the beginning of the day so that you can handle the pressure that is waiting for you. And I don't think pressure is necessarily bad. In fact, if you think about this, which planet has more gravity, a big planet or a small planet?
Seems like I would say a big planet, but
Correct.
okay.
So when you're on a big planet, it's harder to move than a small planet, right?
Right.
When you're on the moon, you're able to bounce easily. And so what happens is if you don't have impeccable self-care, the pressure, the gravity gets harder and harder, but you don't develop the muscles to deal with the gravity. And then enter stage left, self-sabotage, where you shrink the size of your planet. I heard this on a TED Talk. I wish I could find it again because I want to give the guy credit, but it was brilliant. If you self-sabotage, you shrink the size of your planet so that there's less gravity. But then all of the cool, amazing accomplishments and the impact you can make goes down because you shrunk the size of your planet. You made yourself small again. And so when you do impeccable self-care, it's not about shrinking the planet. It's about increasing the muscles so that you can walk on bigger planets that have greater gravities, right? And so impeccable self-care is the first thing. And I have a list that I carry with me everywhere. It's like you know how the president walks around with the football, the nuclear codes? I have something with a much better metaphor, I guess. But I have something that is my football. I carry it everywhere I go. And that's my self-care list. I call it my consistency calculator. And it has a list of everything that I can do in the day to take care of myself. I got it right next to me right now. And I mark off everything I do in my day. And then at the end of the day, I score my mood 0 out of 10. And what's amazing is the more things that get checked off during the day, the better my mood. So your mood is it's not this mythical creature that you don't have control over. It's very predictable if you understand how to control it. And so impeccable self-care is the first part when you're going through hell.
Thanks for tuning in. Look for our part 2 conversation with Sean next week, where he continues his 3 pieces of advice when going through a challenging time. Leverage is a premier outsourcing platform that gives you access to a team of skilled professionals who can complete any task or project for life and business. Our goal is to help people be their most efficient and productive selves. Focus on your unique ability. Let us do the rest. Get leverage.